Hey there, good morning. Hope you're having a great day. Meteorologist Dan Amarante here. I do the weather on FOX61. So what we're going to do today, just for a little while, we're going to talk about clouds and how they form. We're going to talk about some storms that can form because of clouds. And I know a lot of students are home. You know, you may not be in school right now. And I mean, you aren't in school right now because of all the quarantines and all that. So just, try to learn a little bit here, and we're going to talk about some of the best that nature has to offer in the next couple of sessions. So what we're going to do is pretty much every weekday at 11 a.m. we're going to be talking about just a different science topic. So I do this science segment on FOX61 called Dan Explains, and if you know anything about me, I absolutely love science. I think it's the coolest thing ever. So what we're going to do is if you have any questions at any point, just let me know. I'll try to get to as many as I can. I may not be able to get to all of them, but any questions, just jot them down, and we'll get to them. And I'll try to answer as many as I can. Now, what I'm going to talk about today is clouds. What I'm going to talk about tomorrow is space. Space is awesome. We're going to go over that. We're going to go over earthquakes and tsunamis on Friday. So a whole range of things. And just trying to get people to get interested in some of the best that science has to offer. Now, unfortunately, the visuals that I was going to show you on the computer are not really working too well. So I won't have too much to show you with this particular session, but I'm working on a couple of things that I'm going to be having for tomorrow that'll be really awesome. So we're going to talk about clouds first. And here's the easiest way to see it here. Clouds, look at that. So this is one of my favorite books. It's just a book on clouds, and it just shows you what they're made of, what they do, and that's essentially the basis of what I'm going to be talking about. I have here, well, it's not really working out too well anymore, but it's hot, steamy. You can't really see it, and I don't want to spill it on the computer, but it's boiling water, so there's steam coming off of that. That's essentially what clouds are made of. When I was a kid, I was in second grade, and I always looked up at the clouds and wondered like how they just stuck up in the sky. And I always thought it was the coolest thing, how these clouds like that are made up of tens of thousands, if not millions of gallons of water are just hanging up in the sky all the time. And they weigh a lot, and they don't just come all crashing down at once. I mean, sometimes it rains pretty heavily, but not all at once. So back in second grade, I was a second grader at Highland Elementary School in Cheshire. And we went over clouds, and we talked about Cumulus Clouds and Cumulonimbus Clouds and what they can lead to. And we learned all the different cloud names, and I thought it was the coolest thing. And I was kind of hooked ever since then. And then after that, I saw a movie called Twister, which you may have heard of. And then since then, I mean, I haven't wanted to get away from weather at all. So clouds are just water vapor. Oh, and by the way, this is going to be aimed towards like second through fifth grade. So if you're in those age ranges, you can hopefully learn a little bit here. And if you're older than that, hopefully you can learn a little bit too. Any age can watch this, but I'm going to try to gear it towards that general age range around second through fifth grade. So clouds are made out of water vapor. So they're just those little steamy particles that are floating in the air. And every time you speak, there's a little bit of water vapor coming out of your mouth. Every time you breathe, you're breathing in some water vapor. Sometimes when it's like really dry out, you breathe in less. Sometimes when it's really humid out, you breathe in a little more. And when there's enough water vapor together, it can condense into a cloud. And so that's just hanging up there, all those clouds, all that water vapor. My favorite type of cloud is called cumulonimbus. I know that's kind of a long word, but I'll show you what cumulus clouds look like. I have, because I had the last minute surge of trying to figure out all my visuals, cumulus clouds, look at that. They're the nice puffy cumulus clouds, the nice puffy little white cotton balls in the sky that you see sometimes on like a nice day. They're also called fair weather clouds. They just kind of are floating by lazily. And cumulus clouds are really nice. They bring us some beautiful days, and they typically happen when the air is a little bit more stable. They can sometimes block out the sun a little bit, but when you hear us talking about like mostly sunny days or partly cloudy, that's when you just have a couple of those little cumulus clouds out there. So cumulus clouds, nice and easy. So that's the start of that. Now, when a cumulus cloud has rain coming down from it, so when there's a lot of water vapor inside of it, the cloud starts to become a little bit more dense, it starts to get a little darker, and then it can have the rain coming down from it, that precipitation that happens. So that's something you may have learned about already. The water cycle, when that water, like in my cup here, the water will evaporate, like some of the water is still kind of doing. It's still kind of hot. So the water evaporates. So it's going from a liquid to a gas. So it's evaporating, it's going up into the sky, and I'm kind of almost creating a little cloud on my ceiling here. But it will then condense, and when it condenses, that's when it forms the cloud. So condensation is kind of the second step. You have evaporation, then condensation. And then once that cloud becomes dense enough, once there's enough water vapor all kind of packed in, that's when you have precipitation, which is the third thing. That's when it comes down as rain or snow or hail or sleet, or really any kind of nasty weather that we can sometimes have. Although some people like that kind of weather, but I don't really love it. So when you have that precipitation falling and it's coming from a cumulus cloud, it's called a cumulonimbus cloud. So we just add that word nimbus at the end of it. Cumulonimbus. That's one of my favorite words in weather. Cumulonimbus. I just love saying it. And so that was one of the things that I was really fascinated with. And part of the reason why cumulonimbus clouds were awesome to me as a second grader, and still, is that they can be thunderstorms, like the big thunder clouds. Those like big, huge storms that you get sometimes in the middle of the summer or really any time of year. Those are cumulonimbus clouds. And so when I heard that, and I was like, okay, so thunderstorms come from cumulonimbus clouds. I like cumulonimbus clouds. But hey, a lot of people don't like thunderstorms, they don't like it. So that's something that is kind of your preference. So those, those like thin little clouds, like I can actually sort of see outside now. There are a few, not many of them, but there are a few little thin, little wispy clouds up in the sky. They're called cirrus clouds. And I want to show you an example from the cloud book of what cirrus clouds look like. Right about, let's go to here. Where are you, cirrus clouds? Oh, wow, I'm picking on all the wrong clouds here. Well, actually, here's cumulonimbus clouds. Look at that. So the big old thunder cloud. That's the scary stuff. But yeah, that's a cumulonimbus cloud. Cirrus clouds, I kind of drew it out on my little flashcard here. They're just the thin little wispy ones. Those nice, easy clouds that don't really block out the sun too much, so you can have like a nice day with just a few cirrus clouds, and it just looks like a beautiful day outside. Then if you have like, those days where it's really kind of dreary and cloudy and it kind of drizzles, it's like raining on and off all day, and it's just kind of like bleh. That's what's called a stratus cloud. And the reason why it's called stratus is because it's stratiform. It kind of is just like one layer. It's almost kind of like a blanket. And so if you have just a blanket of clouds that are overhead, that's what it would look like. Just those stratus clouds that just kind of hang out up there. Now, those can have some, days that are kind of okay, kind of all right, but usually if you have stratus clouds overhead, it's not all that beautiful out there. Some of the pictures of stratus clouds, I think I may have some in here. Oh, here's a stratus cloud. So just kind of a little layer of just, blah clouds hanging out. Here's a perfect example. If you've ever been flying, sometimes you'll see like those clouds hanging out overhead. And that's what that is. I'm going to have my assistant behind the camera possibly see if there are any questions that are that I may be able to answer at some point here, because I know I can see the questions are flying in. I'm trying to scroll through as many as I can, but and who said that?
Raquel.
Raquel said, "Are cumulonimbus clouds the only ones that can make thunder?" Pretty much, yeah. To the best of my knowledge, it's just cumulonimbus clouds are just those classic, thunderstorm clouds, and that's pretty much it. Yeah. I don't think you're gonna really get them off of. You're certainly not gonna get thunderstorms off of cirrus clouds. They're like way too thin for that. You need like a lot higher moisture content, a lot more density in the cloud.
Lisa wants to know if cumulus clouds can bring bad weather.
Lisa wants to know if cumulus clouds can bring bad weather. Yeah, they can. And if they do, then that's when if they have precipitation coming from them. I mean, it's all about your definition of what bad weather is. Some people like the more rainy weather sometimes. Some people like the snow. But yeah, the cumulus clouds can bring some bad weather. And then, of course, if they have the precipitation coming down, then that's when we call them cumulonimbus. And let's talk about one other type of, so there's cumulus, cumulonimbus, cirrus, and stratus. Now, there's one really interesting cloud that's called a pyrocumulus cloud. A pyrocumulus cloud. So the word pyro means it comes from fire. So that would mean that it's a cumulus cloud that comes from fire. And that can happen. That happens quite often, actually. There are times when volcanic eruptions, you can have a volcano that's erupting, and it can lead to a cumulus cloud that forms because of that. You can also have A forest fire, if there's like a fire nearby, we saw this in Australia, unfortunately, very recently. If there's a fire nearby, that smoke gets up into the atmosphere, and all those water vapor particles start to grab onto the smoke, and it actually forms into what's called a Pyrocumulus cloud. And I'll show you kind of an example of, well, let's see if they have, well, they have some other stuff here. This one's actually pretty cool. So these are other phenomena. That's called a 22-degree halo. Pretty fascinating. It's also called, you can also have something like called a sundog, which is where you see almost like a little rainbow, like a mini rainbow, which is near the sun, like that little halo around the sun. And those are just really, they're barely even clouds. They're just kind of like really, really thin little moisture in the atmosphere. This isn't necessarily a cloud, but it has to do with it. Rainbows, double rainbows. We've all seen some awesome ones in the sky. We, of course, get inundated with pictures every time that there's any kind of awesome rainbow in the sky, the double rainbow. Sometimes you can get like almost like a triple rainbow. That's when people really get, get really excited for that. Let's see if there's anything else about the Pyrocumulus clouds. Oh, yeah. Let's see here. Nope, don't have it. All right, well, we'll move on. Question. Go ahead.
Rachel wants to know what type of cloud can make snowstorms.
Rachel wants to know what type of cloud can make snowstorms. It can be either Cumulus Cloud or Cumulonimbus Clouds or Stratus Clouds. Stratus Clouds will typically be like the more lazy stuff. Like it's not going to be as heavy of snow. Like you may have just like a couple of flurries. The other day we had some cumulus clouds that came through in the early morning hours, and that was some of those cumulonimbus clouds leading to some of that snow that we had. But you can get basically cumulonimbus or sometimes stratus clouds that can have like little lazy snow, and then the cumulonimbus ones are the ones that give us the big blizzards and snowstorms. Question? Jackson,
age 7, would like to know how do clouds get their white color?
Jackson, age 7, wants to know how clouds get their white color. So it's the reflection off of the sun. So the sun's light, which I actually have a really bright light here, but the sun's light will hit the little particles, and I'll try to get it out of the shot here. But the sun's light will hit those little particles, the little water vapor, that little steam. And so once the sun's rays bounce off of it, I'm going to actually draw a little thing for you here. So you've got so here, these little circles, those are your little water vapor particles. And then I'll draw a sun, and the sun's rays bounce off of it, and they will just like that. So the sun's rays, I'm going the opposite way. There's a sun, the sun's rays will bounce off of the particle, and then it's about the wavelength that it has. And I know this is for grades 2 through 5. I know Jackson is 7 years old, so I'm not going to go too much into wavelengths and light refraction, but it has to do with that. It's just the way that the light bounces off of the particle up in the sky. Another question?
Zach, age 8. How many different types of clouds are there?
Zach, age 8. How many different types of clouds are there? Oh, there are so many. And there are a bunch of different like subsets of clouds. So you can have a cumulus cloud, but you can also have altocumulus clouds, which are like kind of higher cumulus clouds. They like don't really block out the sun too much. They're a little bit like, I don't know, more simple looking up in the sky. This is from the book. I mean, you can, right there, you can sort of see like there are a ton of different cloud types. There's cumulus, cumulonimbus. You go to stratus, stratocumulus, altocumulus, altostratus, nimbostratus, cirrus, cirrocumulus, cirrostratus. And then there's lenticular clouds. There's a bunch of different types. Oh, now I have a question for you guys, actually. So for you at home, have you ever been in a cloud before? That's something every time I go speak to schools across Connecticut, I'll ask people, ask the students if they've ever been in a cloud before. And a lot of them say no. Some of them are like, yeah, I was in a plane, we flew through it. But I can almost pretty much guarantee that all of you have been in a cloud before. Have you ever woken up on like a foggy morning and you look outside and there's fog outside? Fog is a type of cloud. So that's what it looks like inside of a cloud. It's just misty. It just looks kind of like you're in a fog. We got another question.
Emily wants to know what type of clouds are fog.
Emily wants to know what type of clouds are fog. There you go. Perfectly leading me right into it. Fog it can be formed a bunch of different ways. There's the way that like you can have the cloud kind of, it's kind of starting like maybe a little bit above your head, like let's say a couple 100 feet above your head, and then it just kind of like lowers to the ground. There's other types of fog. There's fog called radiation fog, which is where the air is kind of gradually cooling, and as it's cooling, it kind of is coming off the ground and cooling, and then that can lead to the condensation at the surface. But there are a bunch of different conditions, but fog pretty much is its own type of cloud, I suppose. But once it starts lifting up, it would probably be more towards like a cumulus or stratus cloud. It's definitely not a cirrus cloud. Cirrus clouds are like way up. They're like 30,000 feet up in the air. Another question.
Luke from Cromwell wants to know.
I think I might know Luke from Cromwell. Luke's a weatherman. You're a meteorologist, Luke. He's a student meteorologist. I've had him. You remember Luke had a Halloween costume where he dressed up as a meteorologist in a. I don't know if that might be him. I hope it is.
I would like to know, can clouds change? Can a cumulus cloud become a stratus cloud?
Can clouds change? Can a cumulus cloud become a stratus cloud? Yes, they can. So clouds are constantly morphing and evolving. It's kind of like, think of it this way, like if you have, I don't know why I'm thinking of this, maybe I just want to play with silly putty, but it's kind of like if you have like silly putty or something, or Play-Doh. You know, you got Play-Doh. You can create your own little cloud. You got your shape of your cloud. Let's say you want to make it more like a circle or more like a sphere. And then you're like, nah, you know what? I want to stretch it out a little bit more. So then you can kind of move it out a little bit more. Well, nature is always doing that to the cloud. So up above our heads right now, there's hundreds of thousands of feet up above our heads that all have atmosphere in them. They all have the air. The atmosphere goes way up there. And that allows for these clouds to, or that allows for all these different temperature changes. The wind is blowing around all over the place up there, all different directions, something called wind shear. And that can lead to these clouds kind of, you know, moving around a little bit, like if you were just molding Play-Doh or silly putty. Now I want to play with silly putty. Question?
A few people have asked what clouds cause tornadoes.
What clouds cause tornadoes? Ooh, yeah. If you actually go on my my Facebook page, I have a little explanation as to how tornadoes form. I believe that was yesterday. Yeah, I posted it yesterday. So you can find my page, Meteorologist Dan Amarante, explain a little bit on how tornadoes form. But one of the things that happens is they come generally from cumulonimbus clouds. That's very often in 99% of scenarios when you would get a tornado to form off of a cumulonimbus cloud. But then it can form something called a wall cloud, which is like where the bottom of the cloud, like think of it like the ceiling. Like if the ceiling of the room that you're in right now started to kind of lower a little bit, you'd be like, oh, that's not good. Well, that's kind of what happens with a wall cloud. The ceiling, the cloud itself starts to lower to the ground, and then it has like this little like odd shape to it, and then it starts to kind of form a funnel, and then everything starts spinning a little faster and faster, and the wind inside of the thunderstorm that the tornado is associated with can sometimes get a little bit more strong, and that's how tornadoes start to form. So the short answer is cumulonimbus clouds. Question?
Brooklyn, age 6, and Lucy, age 4, from Branford, would like to know, do clouds make rainbows?
Brooklyn and Lucy from Branford, age 6 and 4. They want to know if clouds make rainbows, and the answer is yes. It's sort of in a way, it's the water vapor in the atmosphere. And so it's when the sunlight, which, see here, I got almost like sunlight, the sunlight bounces off of that water vapor. And if it hits just the right way, and if there's just the right amount of water vapor, then you can see the full rainbow. And it just looks so cool. So in a way, yes, clouds are what forms rainbows. They're like really thin clouds that you can barely see. Question? Max
is 10, asking, do clouds help the Earth?
Max is 10, and he wants to know if clouds help the Earth. Yeah, they do. Have you ever been outside on a really hot day, and then you're like, it's sunny out, and you're like, oh man, I really wish there were clouds out here to make me a little cooler. Well, the clouds move overhead, and then you get some shade. It feels nicer. Or we need rain. Clouds bring rain. Clouds bring snow. It's all part of the cycle of nature. So that can they are definitely good for the Earth. It's something that the Earth has had clouds for about, I think it's like 4.6 billion years, something like that. It's been a very long time, many billions of years that clouds have been around. And so pretty much as long as the Earth has been around, almost as long as the Earth has been around, the clouds have been around too. So it's a good relationship. They enjoy each other. Any other questions? Let's see.
Jackson, 9, from Mitchell School, wants to know how cumulonimbus clouds got their name.
Jackson 9 from Mitchell School. I think I may have spoken to Mitchell School at one point. Wants to know how Cumulonimbus Clouds got their name. It's Latin. Cumulus, I forget exactly what it means, but maybe we can find that in our book here. See, I want to leave you with the answer. So let's go to the Cumulonimbus section. All right, page 30, here we go. And we're going to find out, so it's Latin, and basically nimbus means precipitation. It means that something's falling from the cloud. Let's see if it does explain that. It probably does. Oh, okay. The Cumulonimbus Clouds inspired the expression being on cloud 9. That's kind of interesting, because there were 10 cloud types, and they went up in height. And so Cumulonimbus Clouds are so towering and tall that they're the 9 out of 10 tallest clouds. So that's cloud 9. That was back in 1896. They started that thought. But yeah, Cumulonimbus Clouds can be pretty scary looking. They can be pretty interesting looking. Like the wall cloud with tornadoes that I was talking about. This is an example of a wall cloud with a supercell thunderstorm. I mean, look at that thing. It's crazy. And then here's another example of a wall cloud with a supercell, and there's a lightning strike right in the middle of it. And by the way, if you're just joining us, or if you didn't start watching from the start, when I do these in the next couple of days, I will have better visuals. I'll have more to show you. I'm kind of just holding up a book right now because we had a few technical issues, but it's all good. We're answering a lot of your questions. Go ahead, another question.
Chris is 10 and wants to know what makes the clouds really dark when there's a storm.
What makes the clouds really dark when there's a storm? It's just the amount of stuff inside of the cloud. So in the cloud, there's the main ingredient of a cloud is water vapor. So it's cooling off now, but I have my cup of water, and it was boiling a little while ago. It's still kind of hot, so there's some steam coming from it, but that steam is water vapor. And let's make sure I don't spill that. Good. And so that steam is water vapor. So the more water vapor that pushes into the cloud, the darker the cloud would be. So in one of those like really, really dark clouds, like something that looks kind of like that would be packed with water vapor. It's something called precipitable water. You don't need to know that. That's like college level stuff. But hey, we're getting an education here. Another question?
Madison, age 8, has a challenging question. Why do clouds have a negative and positive charge?
Oh gosh, Madison, age 8. Madison is way ahead of me. Why do clouds have a positive and negative charge? That is a challenging question, and because we're talking to 8-year-olds, I don't know. I mean, most adults won't understand that, but inside the cloud, remember that water vapor that I was talking about? Those the little dots. We'll make some dots. So you got these little dots, and they're all little pieces of water. And they're all bumping into each other, and as they bump into each other, they're creating a little bit of static electricity. So that can lead to a more negative or positive charge. And typically the stronger the charge, like when you have a lot of those little dots bumping into each other, a lot of those bumps will create a lot of static electricity, which electricity inside of a cloud can mean lightning. So if you have a lot of water vapor, a lot of that, the dark clouds, remember this? Look what's happening with that dark cloud with a lot of water vapor. I'll try to hold it so it makes sense. There's a lightning strike. And so that's when you get the difference in the charge, and you can get the strike of lightning. Other question?
Neil, age 44, would like to know, how do roll clouds form?
Is it Neil Perrin? Neil, age 44, wants to know how roll clouds form. What's up, Neil? Neil's watching with his daughter. So the roll clouds, they really look kind of awesome. Like if you were to look at it from the side, it looks like just this big like tube of a cloud in the sky. But if you were to look at it like straight on, or if you were to look at it from like a, actually, I don't know why I even drew that, because if you were to look at it from the top, it would pretty much look the same way. I was about to draw the same drawing again. But roll clouds happen because the air is kind of tumbling over. So I'll do my best to try to illustrate what's going on. So So the air is kind of tumbling. So picture the air just, it's happening fairly slowly. This is not like a tornado or anything like that, but it's up in the atmosphere. There's a lot of turbulence. The air can kind of change sometimes. It's something called wind shear. So if the wind is like really strong up top and not very strong on the other side, or I mean down below, then you're going to have that difference there. So let's say the difference is like 10 miles per hour. So that's the wind shear is 10 miles per hour if it's between like 100 feet and 1,000 feet or something like that. So that can create sometimes like a little bit of a spin there, and that can sort of kind of create a roll cloud in the right conditions. So roll clouds are pretty interesting. Neil, you're 44. Wow. All right. Look good for 44. Moving on. Question?
Maddie, age 10. How much do clouds weigh on average?
How much do clouds weigh on average? Ooh, that is, I don't have an exact number for you, but that is something, it's very high. It's in the, I believe in the hundreds of thousands of pounds kind of thing. And let's see, average cumulus cloud weight. Well, here we go, we're getting answers here. 1.1 million pounds. Well, I was off by a little bit. 1.1 million pounds, all right.
How can clouds float?
How can clouds float? Because they are just made of water vapor. They're huge. Clouds are very big. They're up there. If you've ever seen a plane, like planes are very big in their own right. You can fit hundreds of people on a plane. And then when a plane goes past a cloud, you're like, wow, that cloud is like 10 times, 50 times, 100 times the size of the plane. Clouds are really big. And so they're actually more like spread out than they appear, which is why if you've ever been in a plane that flies through a cloud, you don't just like bump into it and crash. You just kind of go right through it, and it's just like being in fog. So it's just higher water vapor. So it's essentially one way to think of clouds, and I love talking about this with school children, is if you've ever like taken like a really hot shower or bath, you know how that like it'll get really steamy inside of the bathroom, like the mirror will get all fogged up, and that's what you're doing. You're creating fog inside of your bathroom. And so the next time you shower or take a bath, which I hope is fairly soon. I know a lot of people aren't leaving their homes anytime soon, but the next time you take a shower or bath and it gets all steamy inside the bathroom, you just created a cloud inside of your bathroom. So kind of cool. So you can call it cloud time instead of shower time or bath time. Another question? We'll do a couple more because I got a couple more things to get to as well. I like the questions. I get distracted with the questions because they're always fun.
I want to know if you ever went to Chapman.
Did I ever go to Chapman? I did not go to Chapman. I'm Highland. What's up? Highland School. Yeah. I have a lot of friends from Chapman though, and Norton and Doolittle. I grew up right next to Dodd Middle School. How about that? What's up, Cheshire?
Sophia, 14. What kind of cloud is a Stratocumulus Cloud? What
kind of cloud is a Stratocumulus Cloud? So there actually there's a picture of it here, but a Stratocumulus Cloud is just a cumulus cloud that's kind of, it's a very extended layer of cumulus clouds. Like they're not always, here we go, Stratocumulus, page 54. So it's just kind of like, instead of having I'm gonna draw it out here. So, well, that was a bad looking cloud. But anytime you have like those nice little puffy cumulus clouds that are floating in the sky, you know how they can sometimes look like they're all sort of at the same level, but sometimes they're at like different levels. Like some of them are at, let's say, 8,000 feet. Some are at 3,000 feet. Some are at 5,000 feet. Some can be at 14,000 feet. And they're just kind of, all suspended up there, just kind of hanging out at different layers. But sometimes you can get the one line of clouds, of cumulus clouds. So if you took these and then you kind of just like pushed them all together and had them all in the same layer, that's a Stratocumulus Cloud. And I want to show you on page 54, I believe it was, the Stratocumulus Cloud. Ooh, that's a cool look. Look at that. So that's what a Stratocumulus layer of cloud looks like. See how they're all kind of on the same level. Like it almost looks like you could just run and jump on them and just kind of bounce around, but you can't do that. I wouldn't recommend it. Question?
Isaac, 10, would like to know, how high up are the clouds?
Isaac, 10, would like to know. What's up, Isaac? How high up are the clouds? They can be at so many different levels. So sometimes clouds can be maybe, fog is right at the surface. So that's essentially zero, but most of the time, like on a day when it's kind of a nice day and you have those easy little cumulus clouds, those will be like around, maybe we'll say around 5,000, 8,000, 10,000 feet, somewhere between like around 5,000 feet. Some of the higher thin wispy clouds, like today, the sky is starting to get like, you can sort of see it's starting to get like a little less blue and a little more like whitish, just thin little clouds in the sky. That's when you get those clouds that are like up around 35, 40,000 feet. And there are clouds called Noctilucent Clouds, which is some of the highest clouds you can possibly get. You see that right there? Noctilucent Clouds, you can typically only see way up in the poles, like near the north or south pole, and you can only see them, they're called noctilucent, because you typically only see them like after the sun goes down and it's getting dark out, and then the sun is below the horizon, and so it's shining just on those highest little tiny clouds that are up in the sky. And so those can be like, I think it's like something around 100,000 feet up. Those are near the stratosphere. They're incredibly high up. We'll do one more question, then I got or two more questions, and I got other things to go.
What book are you using?
What book am I using? Sorry, I showed it at the beginning. I know we've been talking. I've been talking for a half hour. Oh man, this is a book called Clouds by Eric M. Wilcox. So if you want to check that out, it's really cool. I labeled a couple of my favorite clouds. Once again, I know if you've been watching from the start, I know I didn't have a whole bunch of fancy graphics here, but it is what it is. And in the coming days, we're going to talk about a bunch of cool science topics. We'll do weekdays at 11 a.m. So I know a lot of people are home. Some of you may be bored, doing your due diligence and staying away from general crowds as much as you should. And that's why I'm home in my house. That was my wife you hear in the background, by the way. What's up, Katie? We're going to be doing these Facebook Lives at 11 a.m. every weekday right here on FOX61's Facebook page. You can also find me on my Facebook page, Meteorologist Dan Amarante. And this is going to be up for a while. This video is going to be up, and it's going to stay on this page, so you can go back and watch it if you want to. Teachers, if you want to use it at any point, or you can always email me once school does get back in session. I love to come to speak to schools and talk to students about what I do as a meteorologist. We forecast the weather, of course. I should have probably specified that at the beginning. And I give students kind of a deep dive into how we do things and how we go on TV and talk about all the fun stuff that weather has to offer. So tomorrow the topic is space travel, and where we are now. There was a launch this morning. It was awesome. I'll show you some of the clips from it tomorrow. It's going to be some great stuff. So looking forward to that. And if you have any questions, you can always send them to me on my Facebook page, and or I'll try to get to some of the questions here. All right, thanks very much, and we'll see you on FOX61 also 4 and 5 this afternoon, 10 and 11 tonight, and then tomorrow morning starting at 4 a.m. all the way until 11 a.m. Have a great day and stay safe out there.